Mr. Chairman for this session, members of the organizing committee of this event, student friends, other special invitees, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you here. I'm extremely happy that this national seminar is addressing a variety of issues, and I'm thankful for the organizers for giving me an opportunity to talk on the specific issue of higher education. And the topic for this session is issues on higher education. Though Dr. Srinivasan has added a flavor to the topic by saying that it is going to be on foreign universities, which I will also deal while I talk on the topic. So the topic is going to be on foreign universities as well as issues in Indian higher education, because 1/6 of humanity being India, anything that happens to India is definitely going to have a global impact. So with that perspective, even Indian higher education reforms are to be viewed in a globalized context. So we try to see how both foreign universities as well as other issues that are relevant to the current Indian context make some sense in the next 45 minutes that I will be talking before. We had a similar event of this type, I think 1.5 years back. That time I very distinctly remember Professor Vaidhya from IIM Bangalore was addressing the gathering, and he very humorously recalled that every individual has different types of challenges, economic challenges, social challenges, educational challenges and whatnot. And he said that he was alphabetically challenged because his name starts with the alphabet V, and every time, right from the time he started attending his school or wherever he went, at times when students or people are arranged as per an alphabetical order, he belongs to that last set that always remains at the back, and he very jovially says, I am always alphabetically challenged. And during that event also he was the last speaker as a sheer coincidence. But today I am a little chronologically challenged, because though my name starts with V, I am not the last speaker, but nevertheless the speaker who spoke before me was so articulate, and the speaker who is going to speak after me, Professor Kanakasabhavati, whom I know for a number of years. Now these are types of speakers who set an expectation to the audience that an event of this type always attracts best people. And I am not sure how much I am going to meet those expectations, but I'll assure you I'll try and do my best. I have a friend who usually says this cliche, a humorous phrase, whenever he starts any public discourse. He says, look, we have these 5-year plans. And if you look at the 12th draft of the first 5-year plan, and that 12th draft would be the final version of the first 5-year plan, and take the first draft of the 12th 5-year plan, more or less it will start the same way. It starts with, there are problems in India. These are the problems, as Professor said, top 3 problems in our country. And that is how these plan documents are prepared. And you can see how much an impression that it is created, that always it starts with a problem that a country has. And you must know that every country has its own problem. But the country is not a problematic country. Every country will have its own problems. And advanced countries, developed countries like the US or the UK or Germany or France, they have their own problems. In fact, the biggest problem for America is that they do not know what is the reason for the problem. In India, we know we have problems, and we know what the reasons for the problems are. But we don't believe that the solution to those problems are in India, but we are under the false impression that we need to import solutions outside the Indian orbit. That is our problem. So every country has its own problems. Because we feel that anything foreign is good. Some will be good, some need not be good. But the overall impression that a majority of the modern youngsters also is that anything foreign is good, and I give you some examples, personal examples, to just convey this message. Some examples that I had when I interacted with some of the school students as well. Now with this in mind, if we try to address all the issues with a view that anything foreign is good, some will give good results, but not necessarily all. And to be more specific, if we are going to deal with the issue of higher education with this perspective, I am not saying that it should not be done, but it needs some clarity in perspective before we engage in doing this task. What we are trying to do is to perform a major surgical operation in the Indian higher education system, of which the Foreign University Bill is also one. And this surgical operation is trying to destroy the very anatomy of the higher education system in the country, destroying, demolishing the autonomy some institutions have in the country, however limited it may be. But at the end of the day, we should realize that it doesn't need a surgical operation. It just needs a minor laparoscopic incision, and that laparoscopic incision is in the minds of the policymakers, the educationists, people in the industry, people in the media, people at all stakeholder levels need to realize the fact that all it needs is just a change in the mindset to view certain issues with a proper perspective. And I will just try to provide that perspective and wherever possible take sides on an issue. Now before we try to dissect the higher education system and understand it from a proper perspective, and since a majority of the audience here, at least a substantial part of the audience is also the student community, I do not know how much you know about the richness of the Indian education system that the country had in the past. He was mentioning about illiteracy and poverty, and as rightly mentioned, illiteracy was the biggest concern, because even in poverty, Indian poverty has richness in it. That is a different subject matter altogether, but there is richness in Indian poverty, but no intellectualism in the illiteracy. But this has not happened in the majority of the years of the existence of our country. It has happened only during the recent past that we lost the very intellectual identity, and more specific within the education sphere that we have lost that identity. And I am not going to spend a lot of time on that, but as students you need to know that as a country we were making great strides in almost all fields. And one of the important reasons for that is that we had a very good education system in place. And this finding was not done by scholars from the Indian establishment. It was in fact the British establishment, through a very serious survey between the period 1800 to 1830 that covered the three presidencies of Madras, Punjab and Bengal. And this commissioned survey was startling in its findings and told to the British establishment that the education system in India is far better than the education system that British was following. And in all spheres, the quality of education, the inclusiveness of education, the quality of teachers, the quality of teaching methodology, and the literacy rate above all, as a proportionate measure, for India was more than the literacy rate of the British establishment at that point of time. In fact, if people have an opportunity to look at that survey, in fact it is wrong to call that a survey. In fact, we should call it a census, because it was with great depth that study was done to just uncover the hidden reality that Indian education system was at its best at that point of time. And whatever has happened to the system is only because of various other policy decisions that were taken after that period of time, for which I'll be spending a little time. But this rich history of Indian education system is clearly X for many students who do not know that we had such a rich historical past in the education system. Probably it is because of the branding, or I call it the debranding, that the modern Indian education has given to the students and who are trained to ignore the richness in the historical background of our education system as a whole. Now, despite all this, we have managed to create again more number of institutions. Post-independent India saw the growth of a number of institutions again in India. And today, the Indian higher education system is largest in the world, having around 32,000 educational institutions. And in the distant second is the American education system, which has around 7,000 educational institutions, and China being the third with over around 3,500 educational systems. And this is despite the fact that not much of favorable policy making has happened in the education sector. But that shows how industrious and hardworking are people still with a good vision to build a good higher education backbone for our country. But this is sheer numbers. If we look at the enrollment rate, then we are lagging behind. As against a global average of around 23%, and this is enrollment rate into higher education, we are far behind. Again, these countries that we took for comparison, we are far behind the US or the UK or Australia or China. Our current enrollment rates are 13.8%. Though the targeted enrollment rate, and they call it the gross enrollment ratio, by 2020 should be 30%. And the rate at which we have grown in the last 10 years, the compounded annual growth rate, as students are constantly being taught in their classes, is less than 4%. When actually what we need is a CAGR of 8% to achieve this target of 30% by 2020. Now park this in one corner of your mind and look at the demographic dividend that our country enjoys. And this you would have read in numerous articles, that the relevant population within the age group, and since we are talking about higher education, that relevant population is between 18 to 24. India has the largest in terms of population within this relevant range, making the demographic dividend of this population a very, very key input for various higher education providers across the world. So everybody now sees India as a potential to boom in the higher education segment. And to provide access to this higher education system, because of this relevant population being the highest, the challenge is to provide access to the big population, to the higher education that is becoming nowadays an essential requirement for this population. So that is a big challenge, and it is only to counter this challenge that the government, post-independent India, the government had to resort to various mechanisms to build the higher education system, which started off with government-run institutions, and realizing that this is a social sector that is very critical and hence the government alone cannot do it all by themselves, also allow the private participation in education and also in higher education, as a result of which we saw an exploding growth in the higher education system in our country. Now this growth has been very explosive, especially in the recent 10 to 15 years, as I mentioned, has underwent an exponential increase. A number of institutions have increased. Not necessarily professional colleges, all type of institutions have increased. And that is why in my next article that I have already submitted, but anyway I will share what will appear in the newspaper right now. And I just thought I will attach some imaginative analogy that contrasts the present growth of higher education with an event that happened very recently. And you all know that on Friendship Day, that was last Sunday, this mission, the NASA mission Curiosity, landed in Mars. So it was on Friendship Day that this Curiosity landed in Mars with the hope that it can make new friends in Mars in search of possible human habitation. Scientists were elated because they are going to work on issues concerning the climatology of Mars, the geology of Mars, and also possible human habitation at planet Mars. And I can understand why scientists are elated, because that's their job. So when they got the first images from Mars, you could see in the newspapers how excited they were. And I also told myself, just as scientists are excited, there would be one section of humanity in India who will also be equally excited, because the very scent of a possible human habitation is an opportunity to open a medical college or an engineering college or an arts and science college or a teacher education institution. And when that is possible and India opens a branch, let's imagine that as a country we have a branch in planet Mars. So there is an India branch at planet Mars and the possibility to open all these engineering colleges or any other professional college or any higher education institution for that matter. So if it is a medical college, you have event managers who can orchestrate a possible inspection for the Medical Council of India, who could create infrastructure, who could get doctors on a lease, rental doctors, or even possibly outpatients, rented outpatients thrown in from Earth to Mars. You never know. Trichy can have the record of sending the first outpatient for a medical college inspection in Mars. You never know, it might happen. So we'll have a transplanetary migration of outpatients because we need a medical college in Mars. Or an engineering college, seeing the trend that we are seeing today, it looks like the number of engineering colleges is inversely proportional to the demand. Because there are more number of engineering colleges and less number of students opting for it. So makes a case very strong to open an engineering college in Mars. Or a teacher's college, teacher education college. As per the latest report, the ASER report last year, absenteeism is the biggest concern. And with no schools there, it's good to take an education there and come back to Earth and continue a private tuition. A majority of them do that. And that's a finding from the ASER report last year. Or arts and science colleges, if it is in the cosmopolitan cities of Mars, the interest level is high. If it is in the remote areas, no arts and science college, I'm sorry. For legal education, and especially for the law college students, if the government starts in Mars, it's okay. If private institutions start a law college in Mars, they will oppose. And most importantly, the biggest potential is for the distance education provider. As long as they have the propensity to deliver a distance education program sitting on Earth and deliver it in Mars, that's the biggest potential. And you can dismiss this as a joke, and as I see you laughing. But as you laugh at this, we should pause here and ask the question. Yes, we are expanding, and it is necessary that we have to expand. But then, do we need a clarity in the approach that we are taking in this expansion? So there is absolutely no doubt that at the current levels of enrollment, still there is a lot that needs to be done in the higher education system in our country. But what is just said quickly summarizes the imagery of the various approval mechanisms that our higher education system has. Because when these statutory authorities like the Medical Council of India or the National Council for Teacher Education or AICTE and all these were enacted as statutory bodies, they had a different concept in the enactment, and it gives us a feeling that they are losing their steam. And I call this as the McDonaldization of higher education. Just as McDonald's is opening a lot of franchises all over, we have so many institutions which is necessary, but then we need to put a break here and ask this right question. Yes, it is necessary, but the way in which we are doing it now is more an input-based approach, and what we need is an outcome-based approach. An input-based approach is one where if we have 25 computers, if we have a building, if we have this much land, yes, we are fit to start an institution. An outcome-based approach is a little different, that it assesses the quality of the graduates, the quality of the evaluation, the pedagogy that is being employed in the teaching and practice. Now, if that is going to be the barometer that is going to be in place right from the time that we will give approvals to start institutions, then we would be leaving a great impact. And this is necessary, especially in this globalized context, which unfortunately many people think that if somebody from Africa or somebody from the other less developed countries come and study in Indian institutions, then we are a global institution. Or some students here go elsewhere for an exchange program or whatever program, then these institutions become global. But have you ever asked the question that if our institutions are able to generate, provide, produce individuals whose findings and whose thinking capabilities is able to provide a global impact sitting in India? And this question is very relevant. You just asked this question whether our education system was able to produce a Swami Vivekananda or an Aurobindo or a Sir C.V. Raman after post-independent India. Post-independent India was not able to produce people like them. And according to me, individuals from an educational system that can leave global ideological footprints, then your education system is globalized and not just a physical migration of students and faculty between two different geographies. And that is not the real globalization. That can happen as long as there is a supply and demand. It will definitely happen, and it will continue to happen. But if we are not able to produce Indians here who can lead a global ideological footprint, then we are not talking about real globalization of Indian higher education. Now, with this challenge of expanding, the easiest way to come out of this, as I usually say, if you have a problem, transfer the problem to somebody else. And that's the best way you can solve the problem. Now, if we need to grow at this rate, of course we have a number of good institutions. But why not outsource this growth also? Let's ask even foreign universities to come and start campuses in our country. At a very broad level, though I am educated in some of the best universities across the world, and I have high regards for some of the best universities outside India, and I will continue to have, because I know that the DNA of some of the universities is very good. But those are the universities which will never have an aspiration to open a campus in our country, unfortunately. So what's the point? Which means we need to enrich premier institutions in our country as a first move to become global institutions of that class. And don't we have them? Yes, we have plenty of them. We have the renowned IITs, some good NITs, some good deemed universities, some good private colleges. We have a number of such institutions who can, if given the right regulatory environment, can rise up to such occasions. So what is needed is oxygenation of such institutions, and not strangulation of such institutions by all these antiquated regimental regulations that the higher education system is currently facing. And I will very briefly touch with some of these regulations, starting with the foreign universities. And I would like to leave an opinion. I would like to leave certain ideas in your minds by just dispelling some myths that are put forward by various stakeholders in support of the entry of foreign universities in our country. And then I will also say my own opinion, and then I leave it to the audience to form their own opinions, but I just place some of the facts before you. The Foreign University Bill, which is currently pending in the Parliament, and for some obvious reasons also was opposed by a member of the majority party in the UPA coalition. It was opposed by the very same Congress MP, and that's one of the main reasons why it got stalled in the previous sessions of the Parliament. But the reasons, that's a different subject matter altogether. But even before this Foreign University Bill was passed, or it's about to be passed, even before the idea of Foreign University Bill got into the Parliament, we can see a number of such institutions operating in our country. As of the available records, it could have changed. There are more than around 160 universities operating in our country with no approval, no recognition. And this is important because you should understand that the mindset of our students is anything that has a foreign label, approved recognition, we really don't care about it, and you still have a lot of students joining these institutions in the country. In fact, we have even a public interest litigation against this filed in 1998, which is still pending. But the fact of the matter is, without even the bill being enacted, right from 1995, we still have a lot of unapproved foreign institutions in our country. And in fact, a senior academician whom I don't want to name, and both of us share this information, both of us know this information, that one university, I don't want to name the university, in California, you go to the university, it is in a rented apartment, and you go to that floor of that apartment, it will be in one room, and you enter into that room, it will be occupying one cubicle of the 4 cubicles. The 3 of the remaining cubicles are occupied by different small companies, and all 4 of them sharing a single telephone number. And that is a university there, and that university will offer a degree here, and we don't know about it, and we go enroll and get those degrees. And these are unapproved institutions. Now this is one part, this is one class of foreign universities that are here. But of course, these unapproved institutions will be weeded out. The process has started, but it should happen at a faster pace. But the real issue is the Foreign University Bill, which will become an act. And why is there a support for that? There are 3 major reasons that are put forth, and I would like to just highlight those 3 major reasons. The first thing it says that it is the biggest saving for the foreign exchange reserves for our country. It will reduce the foreign exchange outflow, because when these universities come to India, not many students will go outside India for foreign education. At a very broad level, the superficial level, if you read this statement, you will be easily carried away. But if you look at some of the statistics, 80% of the students who go for a foreign education go for a postgraduate education, not for an undergraduate education. I'll talk about that a little later. The expectation is that 75% of the students will stop going to foreign universities. As a result of it, $7.5 billion will be saved for the country. So the expected annual outflows $10 billion because of Indians leaving India to get a foreign university degree. Also, you should know that India and China are the biggest exporters of students to various foreign destinations, and the majority of them go to the US, followed by UK, Australia. And ask this question whether this is possible, that if at all foreign universities set up, good foreign universities set up campuses here, whether all students will remain here in this country. My estimate is that it is not possible, because I have interacted with so many students before I arrived at this conclusion, and they think that they have to have a postgraduate education outside India, because they think that is a passport for a global career, and second, they want to experience the flavor of an international education. So even if some of the universities come here, I don't think a number of such students who otherwise would have gone to foreign universities are going to stay back. They will continue to go. So the loss, the estimated savings in foreign exchange is a complete myth. There will be other students who will join these foreign universities in India. That might happen. But students leaving the country, in my estimate, will not happen. And secondly, if you look at the type of students who leave, I actually said 80% of the students leave for postgraduate studies. The second reason that is put forth is that the entry of foreign universities will increase the quality of higher education. Now, if you look at the last 2-3 years of happenings in various renowned universities in US, UK, Australia, all over, you would find that there is enormous tension in these university campuses. The Obama budget has cut its allocation for higher education. It is concentrating more on primary and secondary education. The Browning report in UK has just increased tuition fee just like anything. So you find massive protests in UK on the rising tuition fees. There is already a pressure that is building in all these universities, foreign universities. And I am talking about those universities that will actually attract the international student community, a majority of those being the Indian students. So what will happen because of this pressure? They need actually foreign students to come here, because this pressure has a direct impact on the top line of the foreign universities. That is the tuition fee that can be generated. So I wouldn't find a sensible foreign university saying that, look, there is a huge student market in India and let's go and open up a campus there. And if I do that, most students need not come here, they will study there. It's not possible, because they need more Indian students and they will definitely get them also. But the reason that these universities will come and offer this quality postgraduate education will not happen, because they need more postgraduate students for their home universities, because they are facing a lot of financial pressure. The third reason is that this sort of a competition will increase the quality. Now, with these two important examples that I gave you before, have this as a background and ask this question whether there is going to be a real improvement in the quality if at all some good foreign universities come. And my estimate is they won't. So what type of universities will come will be the classic XYZ universities whom you and I really don't know. And anyway, they are not capable of offering quality postgraduate and doctoral programs, and that's why they are XYZ universities. So they will just resort to offering the conventional UG degree courses. And you know what state of a disarray is our basic undergraduate higher education system, and one telling statistics to just prove this disarray is the quality and also the quantity of the faculty that is available, including faculty available in the premier institutions in IITs. They have a vacancy rate of 25 to 30%. Today's newspaper, you read Central University's faculty vacancy position is just soaring. And you cannot commoditize. I can understand if there is going to be competition in the consumer market. The previous session was discussing about that. You had two sides of the argument. But I can understand if the argument is that the competition is going to increase the quality of the service. It might be true in the consumer market. But in this social discipline of higher education, I have my own doubts that the entry of foreign universities will improve the quality, because we cannot treat this as a commodity market. Now, where are we going to get teachers? I can build some good building, but are we generating enough teachers who can teach these students? It is not possible, because even the existing education system is not finding enough number of teachers. And the worst that can happen is these teachers being poached by these potential foreign universities that can easily pay them good salaries. It can happen. Of course, there will be some faculty members who, for a passion for teaching, can still continue to teach with some of the best institutions in the country. But I am not ruling out the possibility of a migration of teaching faculty, as a result of which the quality of education will definitely be diluted as against the expectation that the quality will improve with foreign universities entering into this country. Now, these are the top 3 points that I always use, and of course there are other issues that we can deal in detail, but these are the 3 points that I use when I enter into any discussion regarding foreign universities. But at the same time, I always believe in providing a workable solution, because we have a grand challenge before us. We need to provide access as well as provide quality education. And there are good universities. Let's accept the fact that there are good foreign universities. So when the foreign university bill was getting delayed, there was an attempt to get them into the country through backdoor by declaring them as deemed universities, which strangely the UGC itself opposed. The University Grants Commission itself opposed, saying that this is not possible, so that attempt was thwarted. And finally, a regulation to allow foreign universities, and only the top 500 foreign universities in collaborative mode with renowned accredited Indian institutions, is what the government said in the present scheme of things is possible. And this is what actually China did. See, China did not allow foreign universities to just independently create campuses. They said you need to collaborate with an existing Chinese university. And having said that, they also earmarked huge funds to create indigenous world-class universities themselves without any foreign collaboration, because they said that if we need to prevent students from leaving our country, let's provide them an opportunity that will give an education that is truly world-class. We're building such universities right here in our country. That's the China model. I'll talk about that very briefly later. But then this is, in the present state, the status quo is that, yes, the collaborative model is allowed. But there again, my view is it has to come with a rider that collaborative model can be only for postgraduate education and PhD education, because that's where our country is lacking, because we need more teachers engaged in postgraduate education and PhD education. Of course, I have never found, of course, there are a minority set of fresh undergraduates who want to take a postgraduate or PhD work out of passion. But the vast majority of them do not want to take postgraduate or PhD education in our country. It is very unfortunate. And that is leaving this gap of the teacher faculty to student widening year after year. And it is because of that reason I take a view that it has to be only for postgraduate and PhD education for the first 10 years, because that will demonstrate the genuineness, the genuine intentions of these foreign universities to set up campuses in our country. And if this rider is there, I don't know how many good foreign universities would like to do that here. I attended the Indo-US Education Summit in Washington last year. A very, very renowned private university in the US, I don't know the name, I asked the president, look, this bill is going to come very soon. Will you be interested in setting up a campus here? He said, I'm sorry, I will not be able to do that because ours is a research university. We are known to have a DNA of a research university, and I am not sure whether I will be able to engage in high quality research and high quality postgraduate education in India. So I don't think I will be able to open a campus in India. But we are under the impression that it is the Stanfords or the Harvards or the Princetons of the world who will come and set up campuses here, which I doubt will happen. Now this is about the foreign universities, and I already told you that even the Indian higher education system, considering that it forms a substantial majority in a global context, also needs a little bit of revamp. And let me spend just 10 minutes before I conclude on what needs to be done to fix this. If you look at the other spectrum, foreign universities is one. The other thing that I see happening is these corporate universities. We look at America as a benchmark. I haven't seen a GE starting its own university. Of course, it has its institution at Croton, but that's more for its employee training, not for the formal education. I haven't found corporations starting universities. The best that they have done and which they need to do is to support existing educational institutions through donations for research, create endowments for growth of the institution, and that is what they are doing in these advanced countries. But here we have corporate universities setting up their own university campuses. And I already told you that it is necessary to build such universities, but I would rather support an initiative that encourages corporates to do this as a philanthropic measure, or support education institutions because today the challenge is also access to finance in building such educational institutions and sustaining them over a period of time. And if corporates themselves start building such universities, again the challenge gets compounded. This is my personal opinion. So I would rather want lots of corporates to engage with the academia to build good academic institutions in the country than to create, again, all by themselves that they can do as a philanthropy. Of course, education is philanthropy today, but then he explained how different ways in which education is happening, and I'm going to also talk about that very briefly as we go on. There are a number of bills that are still pending in the parliament, a dozen bills that are pending in the parliament. I'm not going to talk about all of them. The important bill is the accreditation bill, which says there is going to be a new accrediting agency. But we are not able to ask this question, or we have asked this question but not able to find the answer. For professors here know that there is already this National Assessment and Accreditation Council. We have this National Board of Accreditation for Engineering Education. So it's not that we don't have an accreditation system in place. We do have it. So the question is, why do we need a new system? Because when these accreditation agencies were created, the assurance or the expectation was that we are gearing to be signatories to the Washington Accord. And that's why this National Board of Accreditation was conceptualized in the early 90s. Until now, we are not seeing any tangible result in the Washington Accord, because when India becomes a signatory to the Washington Accord, that will enhance the global mobility of our professionals to practice the profession anywhere in the world. And this was the assurance that was given when this National Board of Accreditation was conceptualized. But 20 years have gone and we still don't know whether we are going to sign this Washington Accord or not. And with no answers to such questions, all of a sudden another bill. And that bill is also allowing outsourcing rating agencies to rate institutions. And I don't have to explain to you what happened when established rating agencies who rated those financial steroids in 2008. We call them the financial steroids. They all rated them with all A plus, and all that. That was one of the reasons for the major financial crisis in 2008. But anyway, I am not digressing. So this accreditation bill, according to me, is superfluous and not necessary. When the present system needs to be reformed and hence has to be reformed to improve the quality of education in our country. Two important bills that are often talked about is the Education Tribunal Bill and the Unfair Practices in Higher Education Institutions. Now, if you look at the majority of the disputes that happen in the higher education institutions, two main reasons. One is related to the faculty or the staff employment in these institutions, and the second is related to admissions that are happening in these institutions. Now, it is not that because there is no regulation to check this. There are various enactments, state enactments, various statutory provisions that have a check, but nobody is willing to exercise the powers that are already available to take action against any institutions. So this new bill is just, in my opinion, an arithmetic addition that could probably decorate cosmetically the higher education system, and above that I don't find any value in this new bill. Because already we have systems in place and we don't want to exercise the power that we already have in checking these malpractices in admissions. And assuming that this bill is in place, for the sake of argument, see, I believe that faculty recruitment, faculty promotion has to be performance based. I am going to be the higher education, I am supposed to decide on issues on higher education. I will definitely encourage institutions to recruit or promote faculty based on performance. And that is why I always say in many of the meetings that the PhD degree that we give, we think that that is the end of research. Once somebody gets a PhD, and it's unfortunate today, when somebody gets a PhD overnight, he becomes a principal or director of some college. And then he gets the administrative powers and he forgets about teaching. And unfortunately, the purpose of creating PhD scholars is to transfer the knowledge gained to the students, and that is completely missing. And that is why I always say a PhD degree must come with an expiry date. So every 5 years, you should have publications, you should have done research, otherwise your PhD degree gets expired. This raised up a big controversy in one higher education meeting, but then everybody, after the meeting was over, said, "Sir, you boldly said that we agree to that." We need PhD degrees with expiry date, and we are not willing to do that. And any attempt to encourage faculty and promote them will have its counter effects, and these types of bills will only encourage such avoidable litigation in education institutions. Today, education institutions, more than running the institution inside the college campus, we are sitting in high courts and supreme courts arguing various cases because the number of litigations have increased, and these are avoidable litigations. And this bill is a clear example of how we can avoid such litigations by not passing these bills. The next bill is the Innovative University Bill, the World Class University Bill. Philip Albert, he wrote an article today in today's Hindu, I don't know how many he read there. Since I'm talking about foreign universities, it is relevant to point out that how foreign universities are engaging different agents, middlemen for admissions and taking students, and the tribal university that you saw last year, and very recently, I forgot the name of the university. Anyway, it's best to be forgotten, it's a bad university. So, these are the type of universities that employ such agents and take students from India, China and many countries. A very good article in today's Hindu which you should read. He says, world-class universities. And he says, nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows how to create one. And nobody knows what is the benefit of creating a world-class university. But then every country wants a world-class university. The World Bank said in 19th century, if we need to start a world-class university, it needs $50 million in 100 years. Then 20th century, the University of Chicago, when it was established, said it's enough if we have $100 million in 20 years, because with advancements, time also gets shrink. Cornell University established its medical school in Qatar for $500 million in 2000, early 2000. In Saudi Arabia, a world-class university, the king is established at a cost of $3 billion.